coming to you live from the Salad and Fries studio. With me, your host, Centron, and my special guest. Hey guys! Welcome to this week's edition of Salad and Fries. It is March 7th. I know you all saw the March promo. March is going to be hot. So we had to start off March the right way with a very big, super, in my opinion, and in everyone else's opinion, a super big celebrity chef, in my opinion, and in the quality of his work. Hello! So we are so glad to have each of you here today. Don't forget to visit us each week on Mondays at 7 p.m. for a live show. Don't forget to go to our YouTube channel where you can like and subscribe to our Salad and Fries channel. Each week you'll get a hot, fresh new episode. Those episodes will be posted on our stream. In the event you can't make it to watch it live, you can always watch it later if you subscribe on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to visit our website at www.salad-n-fries.com. You'll be able to stay in the know with all things great and special with Salad and Fries. This month, March, we have an unbelievable lineup. So don't forget, check us out. We have hot episodes every Monday at 7 p.m. So what's been going on in your world? Like, a lot's been going on over here in the Salad and Fries world. We have been, March is booked, but we have been aligning April, and April is going to be fire. I think we may take like a spring, early summer hiatus just for a little to come back with some fire in the fall. But we're still trying to plan it out because if we have some more hot interviews that may pop up in May, then we may go into May. But April may be our last hot month for this season, but we're glad that you're along for the ride. So we're so happy. But either way, don't forget to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. But you can get to YouTube by going to salad-n-fries.com. So let's get into it. Today we have our special, let me get to the top of my teleprompter. You know, I have to do everything on my own. I'm the producer. I'm everybody. Y'all see the background here? There's a lot going on out there. Tonight, we're honored to have Gardenia's Custom Cakes and Catering LLC executive chef and owner, Desmond J. Pringle. Chef Pringle founded Gardenia's Custom Cakes and Catering LLC while attending the International Culinary School at the Art Institute of Atlanta. Upon returning to South Carolina, Gardenia's was officially incorporated in 2009. Chef Pringle gets his passion for baking from his grandmother and artistic flair from his mother, both of whom have heavily influenced Gardenia's to this day. Gardenia's is a gourmet custom and confections studio, specializing in custom wedding, groom cakes, birthday, celebration cakes, and customized dessert bars and live interactive dessert stations. At Gardenia's, they live by the slogan, where grace meets Southern hospitality. And it's their aim to provide every customer with the highest level of professionalism and the utmost respect. Everyone, give a round of applause and welcome to the stage Executive Chef Desmond Pringle. Hey, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I know your day has been long. And I am so glad that you are able to join us this afternoon. No, evening at this point.
Yeah, right? It's the evening.
Long day. So let's jump into it.
Yes.
We're gonna start off with, whenever I bring guests on, I always like to start off with the childhood, because for whatever reason, I just feel like there are things from our childhood and our upbringing that impact who we become and who we evolve to be. Yes. And looking at your background, I see where your childhood has impacted who you have evolved to become. So Who was Chef Pringle as a child? And tell us about your family growing up.
Well, for me as a child, I was pretty, would say reserved, if you would. I wasn't, I'm the comedian in the family. I'm always the one making the jokes and, doing impersonations and things of that nature because I like to see people laugh. I like to see people smile. So it's one of the things that helped me to break the ice when it comes to people. I grew up in Alcaloo, also in Sumter. And if you're not familiar with Alcaloo, that's a small little town just outside of Clarendon County, or Manning, if you would. So where, I grew up with a lot of cousins. We got together as a family growing up, barbecues, Christmas, Thanksgiving, you name it. We were always around somebody. So it was never a time when I wasn't around relatives. So, with that, always had somebody to talk to. So it was never an instance of where you didn't have a friend. Because you always had a bunch of cousins.
We always had a bunch of cousins. Extended brothers and sisters, as I like to say.
Right. Yes. So, and from that, to the point now, I'm pretty still the same for the most part. Like to laugh, like to make jokes, like to cut up. Most of the time people don't get to see that part of me because they're in this capacity with me in more of a business aspect. So when I'm able to do that, it's a good thing. Those who have experienced my humorous side outside of the professional setting know that I'm not as rigid as I appear.
Well, do we really want to call it rigid, or do we just want to call it you're focused to ensuring the experience is felt?
Rigid. I'm rigid. I'm not gonna lie.
He's like, we're not even gonna sugarcoat this. So when and how did you know you wanted to be a chef, and more specifically in the field of baking and confectionery?
Well, one of the things, growing up, I used to go to my grandmother's house all the time, during the summertime. That's one of the things,
That's a South Carolina thing.
Yeah, I was always at my grandmother's house during the summer, and she would bake, so I would help her bake. One of the tasks I was assigned that I assigned myself because I always had to do something. I would straighten up her linen closets, all the stuff in the kitchen, take everything out, clean it out, and then put it back to organize it just so it made sense to me. So I could find exactly everything. And, I was able to see some good old cookbooks as well. I would bake some things from time to time. Me and my cousins would bake like cookies. We did like onion rings. And I remember one year when my grandmother got her, a bread machine where you could actually knead the bread as opposed to doing it on the counter the old traditional way where you cover it.
She fancy.
Yeah, and so we were baking bread like you wouldn't believe. So probably the most moment that we probably had in baking was when we did a Christmas cake one year. It was, if you're familiar with Wilton baking pans, they had all these different shaped pans that were of a particular item. And this one was a Santa Claus face. Oh, wow. So that was the very first cake that she mixed it, baked it, and I actually decorated it. I'm still trying to find that picture. She knows she has it. We just have not been able to locate it. So I'm really hoping she can find that, but that was probably the first instance where I got into baking. But oddly enough, it wasn't what I wanted to do. It's not really a thought. It was just something to do while I was down there. She taught me how to cook and do all these other things, but my goal was to actually be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So
did you see that backup?
Right. I had no intention of baking. That was not even on the radar.
It's so, I don't want to say weird, but it's interesting how we have there's something that we want to do, and then we end up being something else. I had a previous guest on. She was like, I wanted to be a cashier at the Winn-Dixie, and now she's a doctor. You're like, friend, those are two opposite things.
Right.
However, you are a CEO. You are an owner, though.
I am. That is true.
So your vision's still aligned.
It is.
Just I think it's a bigger capacity that you're in now, in my opinion, in my honest opinion. So who inspired you to become who you are today?
Well, like I said, as I described in my bio, it's kind of a combination of my grandmother and my mother. My grandmother was one who instilled me, how to cook, how to bake, even though I learned how to cook some things from my mom as well.
Hmm.
But my grandmother from that baking standpoint, but my mom from more of an artistic, well, she'll always tell you it was her that gave me the artistic side, but it was really truly her
Okay.
because if you've ever met my mom, one of the things she's always put together. My mom was
Okay.
never disheveled, if you would,
Hmm.
so she was always doing things at the house to change, the living room, paint colors, always doing something decorative.
Hmm.
So from that standpoint, I can kind of see where I got that from because I'm kind of a creative in that regards. I like to come up with things and doing different things. Me, I keep myself pretty monotone, but when I come to designing and creating for other people, I think I get that from her. So
And so this is where I'm having, as I told you earlier, my Gail moment, because I just had a bunch of when I say everything just came together for me, hearing like I read your bio, but hearing you explain about your mom made me sit and think, that's why his cakes look the way they look. Because the first time I saw one of your cakes in
mhm.
person, I had just come from Atlanta. I came to my cousin's wedding, and when I came into the reception hall, the only thing I could look at I was like, now who bougie made this cake? Who made this bougie cake? Like that's all I kept saying. I was like, this cake is so gaudy. Like my gaudy. Like this is my god. Like when I say listening to you talk about your mom was a southern, like I like to say, elect lady. They had a certain I don't like to say air about themselves, but there was a certain energy that they carried. It was a
Mhm,
distinguished
mhm.
energy from everyone else. It
Yes,
was, this is me, and these are the things that I like. And if you can't
right,
deliver those, please do not approach.
right.
And so, like, when I look at your cakes and I hear what you're saying, now I'm like, he's right. It did come from his mom because I look at myself and the things that I do, my mom heavily impacts it. My mom and your mom are probably twins. Probably twins because if you saw her invitation for her birthday party, it's a night with the diva. A night with the diva.
That
We
sounds
want to
about
be
right.
okay. So they're one and the same.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
yes, I am so glad you explained that because I had that aha moment just now. I was like, wait a minute. His mom really every time I look at a cake, that's why the detail is there. It's how you were raised. It's how would my mom do this? What was she like? So I know this is not on here, but when you went to culinary school,
Uh-huh.
how did that flair impact you in school when it comes to being artistic or the artistic side? Because the technique, I think, is more so your grandmother's side. Like your grandmother taught you tasting, smelling, all that good stuff. But how did that creative side from your mom help you or impact you in culinary school?
Well, oddly enough, I used to draw when I was
Okay.
younger. I did, little sketches and reports. If you ever spoke to any of my teachers, you could tell that I tried to do everything very artistic. When I had certain projects, I always did my own. I never really asked for help for my mom or my dad or anybody else because I was really self-directed because that's how
Okay.
my mind worked. So when it came to the creativity side, before going to culinary school, yeah, my grandmother taught me a lot of the general baking things, but not the science of baking.
Hmm.
Because most grandmothers it's not you measure according to some standard that you
Correct.
develop. And so for me, going to culinary school was a way to hone technique. Um,
Okay.
a lot of people feel, hey, do I need to go to culinary school? You don't, but it does help it gives you a greater perspective and a greater insight into how to bake, why ingredients interact with each other, how they work with each other. And so for me, that just kind of helped solidified how I'm able to, put those applications into my projects that I do for each of my clients. Because one of the things that I really try to make sure that I take what I've learned from my grandmother, but also what I've learned from school to give people a unique experience. And I think that's what separates me from many other bakers, is the fact that I seek that unique experience, not only from the tasting, but from the interaction with my potential clients. Just to get them to see that your wedding can be whatever you want it to be. It's just that you have to give me some creative licensing to come up with something for you. Now, some people, that have come through in culinary school, don't necessarily have that and probably will never get it, but it's one of those things that for me, just how I, did things, drawing and sketching and doing those types of things really helped me, when it came to going to culinary school, and even when I actually decided to start my business.
Okay.
Because oddly enough, my career was in retail management. I worked in retail for over 12 years. So,
okay.
Oh, yeah. So it was this kind of segue in between while I was working in retail. So I left back in 2004 to attend Art Institute of Atlanta. And I actually came back in 2008 after I finished, because the hospitality industry does not pay well. And when you've gone to undergrad, got a degree, excuse me, sorry. You have to, make sure you have income that's going to support what you want. But I knew I always wanted the business. So I took that, motivation while I was working to develop and started, doing cakes here, there, kind of honing my skills. So getting to that point now, I think I'm pretty good.
Well, here you go. You're beyond pretty good, but here you go. I'm glad that you're humble, but baby, I'm sorry. Your viewing of your cakes is an experience. The tasting of your cakes is an experience. Now, I have not personally had I've had the limited experience of ordering, but I haven't had the experience that most people have, the start to finish of let me go in and do a tasting, and to see going from the tasting to the sketch to the actual day of, I've seen the product of all of that. And that is just an experience.
It really is.
I wish that, people, I know this sounds so horrible but I'm gonna say it anyways. I wish, going forward, that the people that you work with, like on their invitations or on their website, they say, and cakes designed by, because that tells me, wait a minute, we about to have an experience at the reception.
Oh, yeah.
So we already know how the name, go into a little bit more detail of how the name Gardenia's Customs Cakes and Catering was created.
Well, it's funny.
Who don't know.
When I was at culinary school, one of the things we had to do was come up with a business plan, or if you would, about if we were to develop a restaurant or a hospitality business of whatever nature that was, we had to come up with the name. So when I looked into names, I didn't want to be, a business based off of my name alone. Because I didn't want the business just to be about me. I wanted the business to have its own life, its own personality. And so when I was looking at names, the couple of names that came to mind, one was Magnolia, which is also, a very, popular southern tree. And then you also have the Gardenia. And I started Googling and looking at how many times Magnolia came up, and I said, okay, this is overly used. And I didn't want to have a business that was just going to be overly used. Magnolia, you go anywhere around South Carolina, you'll find some business with the name Magnolia in it, but you don't see them using Gardenia. And the reason why I ended up choosing Gardenia, because when I started doing handmade flowers, taking classes in that regards, one of the meanings of the Gardenia means feminine grace, but it also evokes feelings of Southern hospitality, because anybody who actually has gardenias in their garden, the smell, the aroma of it, it just smells expensive. It's a very delicate flower. Anybody who's ever handled a gardenia, you know you're not supposed to touch the actual petals, because if you do, they stain the petals and it'll actually go bad really fast. And if you look at the cost of gardenias, you see they're relatively expensive. So from that alone, I like the name, but I also wanted that to represent the type of business that I wanted, one that was very, I guess, expressive, but also expensive, not necessarily being like, oh, you can't afford me, but it's one of those things that I wanted it to actually separate itself from just being Desmond's cake. And, when I talked to other bakers and I asked them about their names, and said, why did you come up with a name of that nature? Because it's, when you're thinking of your name for a business, you want to do something that's going to kind of outlive you.
Correct.
When you're Desmond's Cakes, you're always going to be, they always think somebody named Desmond is going to be there. In regards, gardenias can go anyway. But the funny thing when I actually came up with the name and actually started using that name from my business proposal in culinary school, is that everybody thought I was a woman. Most people who would call me, they would ask, well, can I speak to Miss Gardenia's, or Miss Gardenia's there? And I'm like, well, this is she.
She has a very raspy voice.
Right. But that's how I designed, I specifically wanted the business to be. I wanted it to really have a very feminine appeal, because that's who my clients are. I knew most of my clientele were going to be women. And so in the South, particularly, most people who bake tend to be women. You don't see a lot of men or Black men, who actually bake. And when you do, they're surprised, because most people assume that the business or whoever was doing the cake was either a wife, a girlfriend, or somebody in the family. It wasn't me. So for me, for the longest time, it didn't bother me at all, because I knew I wanted the business to kind of take a life of its own. Just really people knowing who Gardenia's is as the business, not necessarily the person, because that wasn't important to me, because I knew what I'm going to produce from that. But eventually it's going to get to a point that you're going to find out who I am, and you're going to learn that I'm a guy and not some old woman. So getting to that point, people really started to, find out who I was. And then when they find out in the comments, or when I'm reading through comments on social media, if somebody commented on something I posted, like, oh, girl, you do some fantastic work. And I'm like, yeah, I do, but I'm a guy. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. No problem, because that's how the business was. It like I said, the name means feminine grace. It, gives you that aura of, being expensive, very feminine, very delicate. And that's why I wanted the business to be. So I definitely want to have a very female-centered focus, because that's who my clientele is. When I get guys come to me, it's very rare. Very rare.
But it's a good thing, because it says, how can I say this? I know the success of your business, the current success of your business, the future success of your business, is because you know your market, one. You know what you wanted to produce. Like, you knew. You're like, this is what I want to produce. This is how I want to produce it. And you stuck with it. You stuck with your vision. And the fact that people are saying, let me speak to Miss Gardenia, to me, it says you are doing what you intended to do. You know that your market is going to be mostly females. Mostly females bake. There is a business here, and I'm not going to say the business, but there used to be a very big business here in Atlanta. And people talked about this company all the time. Oh, I want to get cakes by blah, blah, blah. Cakes by blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So when we was at dinner and somebody brought the cake over, and I was like, oh, this cake is good. And I was like, where is she? So I was like, I went to the place and it's a man. And I was like, who? And it's like, it was the biggest thing in Atlanta. Like, oh my gosh, cakes by so-and-so is a man. And I'm like, yeah, he got y'all, but y'all buying them cakes though.
Right.
Y'all buying them cakes.
Exactly.
So I like the fact, the meaning behind your name and the vision you saw for your company and how you stuck to it. Now, what are you doing, or what did you do? Well, we know you went to culinary school, but what are you currently doing, or what do you continuously do to refine your skill to stay ahead of the game? to keep
Well,
your competitive advantage, as I like to say?
Well, one of the things that I'm always trying to do is to narrow the focus for my business to be very intentional and very specific as to what I do.
Okay.
Kind of backtracking a little bit, when I, started my business, I was doing any and everything, decorative cookies, cupcakes, you name anything pastry related, I was doing it. But then I got to a point, I'm like, why am I doing all of this? Because you can't really, because funny thing is, my business used to actually have food catering as a part of it. In the beginning, I used to cater. I
Okay.
specifically did events that were 50 or less, small, intimate events. And then one day the light bulb went off, and I'm like, I don't need to do that. I mean, there are plenty of great people that I can recommend. I love to cook, but it's not necessarily my passion.
Okay.
And so I wanted to start to streamline the business to where I am now. So specifically, I do wedding cakes, custom celebration cakes, and dessert bars. Those are really the core tenets of the business. But now what I've been doing is to really try to take additional courses, because I just recently completed a molded chocolate class, or as
Oh,
we call it in the
nice.
world, bonbons. So I'm going to come up with a line of signature chocolates, that'll be offered specific times throughout the year. Not necessarily an everyday thing, but it's where I can actually plug in for additional revenue. And then secondly, I've also been doing, or will be launching, candles that are actually they smell just like some of the cakes that I produce.
Oh,
So
nice.
yes, so the three smells that I'm coming out with are very distinct signature flavors that I created in the beginning of my business, and most people know me for those. So I said, put those into that. But I always try to, do some kind of professional development at least 2 or 3 times a year,
Okay.
just to help me hone my skills and learn very specific things. Some artists, I do online courses just to try to help myself develop those skills. And I think, anybody getting into this business, but any other business, you have to take that time. And sometimes it's very expensive
Hmm.
to do that, but it's worth the investment, because it's an investment in the business, and that's what's going to help the business grow and develop even further. So I don't look at the courses as, oh my God, I got to pay all this money, but I know the return that I'm going to get if I produce it and market it correctly,
Hmm.
that I'll get that return back. So it's never, oh, I'm paying all this money, but rather, how am I going to turn this into an actual profitable aspect of the business? So that's kind of where I am now, with, learning and growing and taking classes. It's very intentional. I always use that word, to be intentional, because I do certain classes with the intent of, how can I make this into a profit making aspect of the business.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
classes are used for that reason. Is this is going to be used for something else.
Of which I'm glad that you said that, because I think people need to hear that as a business owner, you understand all aspects of your business. Now, there are some people who do not understand every aspect. They may only can focus on their craft and their talent, of which I recommend those people partner with people who understand the business side of consistently investing in yourself to refine your talent or to keep your talent moving
Yes.
forward. I like the fact that you have stated that you're consistently going after education to continue to broaden your knowledge, because some people think you're supposed to just get a degree and then you're done. Like, no, you should be consistently learning, because when you keep learning, you're like, oh, I've been doing it this way for so long and it's been taking me an hour, and I just learned something that'll help me do it in 20 minutes. So
Right.
now I'm more efficient and I'm more
Exactly.
effective and I
Exactly.
can do more things. If you just tuned in, we are interviewing, or we are having, or being honored to be in the presence of executive chef Desmond J. Pringle of Gardenia's Custom Cakes and Catering LLC in Columbia, Casey, South Carolina. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them on Facebook or on YouTube. They'll pop up and we'll be able to ask them. But please ask any questions that you may have. So, what has been some of the challenges or barriers to entering into the industry, specifically with the cakes, with custom cakes?
Well, for me, it's really just trying to find that right client. Um, That's a big thing because, like I said in the beginning, taking on any and every order just to get my name out there, you in essence, you end up chasing your tail when you do that. So, but I, really started focusing on more of the custom cake side of things, doing wedding cakes and custom celebration cakes. And even though I offered other things, those were the two focal items that I wanted to present to people, and particularly wedding cakes. Everybody knows me for wedding cakes. Nobody believes I do birthday cakes. Everybody asks me like, "Do you do birthday cakes?" I'm like, "Yeah, they're there." I mean, I don't hide them. They're right there in plain view. But most people have gotten to the point that they assume that I do, wedding cakes or dessert tables because that's what they see the most, and for good reasons. I like doing them. So I try to, stick with, doing all those things. So with getting into it's really just developing clientele, really just allowing the cakes that I create personally be the brand for marketing myself because I've talked to some other people in the industry. They're like, "Oh, yeah, you not necessarily my industry, but people who are in the hospitality industry who were saying, oh, you can just build a portfolio off of some pictures you found online." And I'm like, that's not a good thing because if I'm not able to produce that same cake that somebody may want, then I'm doing them a disservice because they're going to look at this like, how did you produce this cake, but my cake looks like this?
It was on your website.
Right. Exactly. And so that's why, and that's one of the main reasons why I don't have a book, if you would, like grocery stores, that you can pick out a specific cake. Now, some people who do that, that's fine. That's within their model. But for me, I like to do custom work. It's Gardenia's custom cakes. And so everything I do is custom. So, really trying to get into the business of things is really just doing those things that I know were necessary to actually get my business out there. So taking the orders that I probably wouldn't normally have taken just to get into, this market and really start to grow it. Because at the time, like I said, I was working in retail, but also doing cakes on the side. So I still had income coming in. So this was more of passive income because the business was not to a point where I could actually sustain it by itself. So getting to that point of really actually allowing the business to grow and develop while also working in retail. And if anybody's ever worked in retail knows it's almost impossible because there's always a sale and you're always working on
working.
And then during the holidays, you're always working. So, but I made it work, so getting to the point that I am now, but really taking the time from just doing one order here, one order there, and just continually building upon that, but really putting out there the type of things that I wanted people to see. So knowing that I wanted to do specifically wedding cakes, that was always my passion, and in my business plan is one of the top things that I wanted to produce, and that's what I'm doing. So actually getting into that market is really about, aligning myself with specific planners, because if you're going to do wedding cakes, you really need to get yourself aligned with very good planners, good professional planners. That's the difference. And to make sure that they understand you and you understand them, because there are planners that I really enjoy working with, and there are some planners that I don't enjoy working with because I know that the integrity is not there. But, from the standpoint of, really allowing myself with really good professional planners, those who are very forthcoming with the information and really can convey that to the client, has been a big thing for me. So those entry points were pretty easy because it was easy to really convince somebody once they actually tasted the product. Because once you taste the product, that's the bonus. Anything else after that is just, the extra. So, having a good base product was always what allowed me to get into certain arenas and being able to establish a longevity in this profession. So I've been doing this now about 13 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm actually to the point now that I'm actually in my own studio, but it didn't happen overnight.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'll actually have some retail days, but getting back to your point about, getting into this, entry, with wedding cakes was really not that hard for me because that's what I presented to the public. That's what they mostly saw that I produced. So it was easy for me to really, market that point, and because I knew that's what I primarily wanted to do. So entry points, not too bad, because I came back to South Carolina doing stuff that other people weren't doing. So that made it even easier for me to carve a niche out, if you would, for myself in the business.
And I want to say, not to throw anyone under the bus, they weren't doing it on the scale in which you were doing it also. Like, there's some very creative bakers in South Carolina, but I think a lot of people miss the science behind it and the knowledge that goes into doing what you do. Which also, again, it helps you separate. I don't want to say separate yourself, but it just puts you in a different category. Now, to go to your point about the planners that you partner with, you made a very good point. So me, as having doing event planning in Atlanta, I understood the importance of making sure that I align my brand with particular vendors, because I would not work with any and everybody. I only have a group that I work with, and people are like, well, why do planners only work with certain people? Because we know, by me being a perfectionist, I know they'll be able to develop or produce what I need them to produce. Now, yes, I have multiple vendors in each category, depending on the client that I'm working with. So I can be like, okay, this is her budget, but this is what she wants. So let me get her with this person. So like when I experienced your first cake, I was like, you know what? Whenever I get back into heavy doing planning with particular clients, this is the person that will be on that tier. Like for me, you would be a luxury tier vendor. I wouldn't put you on a general planning tier. You would be on a luxury tier, because I'm like, the person has the budget. The person understands what it takes to produce what you are producing. And so therefore, when the bill comes across the table, they just sign, and then they're like, okay. So yes, your point of that can be difficult sometimes working with certain people, and it also can be difficult when working with certain clients. Finding the right client has always been interesting, but me, I ask certain questions up front. And I know I don't do it anymore. I used to charge a consult just for you to even meet with me. I used to charge, and that fee went towards your contract. So if you said, oh, you know what, I don't think I can pay that fee, then I'm like, okay, then you're not the customer for me. But if you said, oh, okay, it's just $100, no problem. And I was like, that $100 goes towards your planning fee in the end, or your contract when you contract me. And they're like, oh, okay. Whenever I got the, oh, okay, my eyes was like, all right, let's go ahead and wow them. For you, when they come into your studio and they taste your cakes, they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. For me, when they would sit down with me, I would ask you questions up front via my website. Fill this questionnaire out and for me to prepare for your consultation. You came in, I had a whole table set up to feel and look like what you just told me on paper. And they would come in and be like, how did you do this with words? I'm like, I'm a creative. I can see via the words that you've communicated what you want. And I was able to create this table. Now, without even going through this meeting, just sign here, press hard. And they would do it. They're like, we don't even need a meeting because you created what I wanted without talking to me. I'm like, so, and I know you have that ability. You have the ingenuity and the creativity to create the experience that everyone wants. So, which leads me to my next question. What has been most rewarding in what you do?
I think probably the most rewarding thing of doing what I do is being able to help somebody's event be what they exactly envision it to be. taking the time to actually meet with the clients, because kind of, segueing on a little bit of information that you shared, one of the biggest things in business that has helped me be successful is the fact that I start the experience before you even come to a cake tasting. Setting the standard, making sure I communicate in a timely manner. I'm not going to let you wait 48, 72 hours to respond, because in this market, I do understand that people have so many different options to go to. And I know how I start the process is how they will know the process would go. So I try to, as soon as an email comes through, because I literally keep my phone by me as I'm working, because I'll check my email every time I take a slight break. I'll check my email just to see exactly if anything had come in, and I would at least just respond just to acknowledge that I received the email and that additional information would be forthcoming. And so when I actually get to a stopping point, I would actually sit and cultivate the email so I can actually send to them to give them that information so they can start making their decision as to what they would like to do with me, pursue, going, with me, or, going on to somebody else, because one of the things, that I've been, I guess, gifted, if you would, is to really set the expectations and to set the experience. And I think those are two of the things that you really have to give the client in the beginning. Because it's not necessarily how good your cake is, it's also how confident you are in what you're able to do. So I try to make sure I present information that's going to be challenging to them, to, making sure they're understanding exactly that you're not just getting a cake, you're investing in this. And that's how I kind of like to talk about my cakes as an investment, because oftentimes people will see a price and like, ooh, that's a lot. And I said, well, you're investing in what you're desiring. And if you have a specific look, then this is what you need. But if not, then, there's alternative routes, because I like to give people as much reality when it comes to cake design. It's not just about, as you've seen popular memes, it's just sugar and flour and butter. It's that's only part of it. Those are just ingredients. Ingredients are nothing until the person who handles them make them into the art that you envision, that you
correct
at your event. So, getting to that point, with me, giving them that insight into being able to come up with something, for them to really get to that point that they feel comfortable enough and confident enough in what I do. So I've been pretty good at doing that.
No, you've been excellent at that. Let's be clear. Because for me, it's like, if I could just find a bunch of clients to be like, listen, I know he's in South Carolina, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
I travel.
He travels. Like, I have an amazing vendor here in Atlanta. Love her to death. But then it's like, when I met you, I was like, oh my gosh, if I could just put both of them together, they are just both amazing. So here we're going to go into a little bit of your everyday business questions. So on average, like, how many cakes for weddings and events do you do? Maybe a month or a quarter or a year, or however you would like to answer that one.
Well, you'll be surprised. People think I do a lot, but I actually do very little.
Okay.
I actually do, on average, for a year, we'll probably do anywhere from 36 to 40 events. Which is not bad.
For me, I just was like, what?
It's not, you get, when you go to my site and you look at some of the things that I do, you swear I'm doing like a lot, because I focus on the quality of my clients and not necessarily the quantity. Because I know what my goals are for the month, and I know how many clients that I need to reach that goal, because I have my actual goal and then I have my stretch goal. My stretch goal is anything over what I desire to get. And for the most part, I hit those points, and I do not many events, but I do very worthy events, if you would, the ones that, generate the most revenue for me. And because I do a lot of wedding cakes, most people it's a big investment. You're spending thousands of dollars on a wedding. And so for me, being that I do many wedding cakes and not a lot of party cakes, it really helped, So when people are like, how in the world are you able to do that much in revenue? And and only do so little events throughout the year because I understand pricing.
Correct. Correct.
Because a lot of people get a little confused as to there's a popular quote, if I can remember it correctly, it said or charge what you're worth. And I look at that and I'm like, that's not a good statement, because charging what you're worth without knowing why you charge can be a big problem. So for
That's true.
me, it's all about the costing and being able to accurately determine what the pricing should be, because as I mentioned, your ingredients are just your ingredients. They're not really the most costly part of your cake. It's your time.
Correct.
And that's where a lot of bakers, unfortunately, fall, because they don't value their time as much. And it's very strange when I see, or ask certain bakers in certain platforms, what they charge, for labor and things of that nature. And they're like, oh yeah, I pay myself minimum wage. And I'm like, minimum wage? I'm like, you're offering a custom product. How are you charging the basics? And so that's why so many people in my industry get, burned out really fast, because they're taking any and everything, because they're doing, for example, they may do 10 cakes in a week and make X amount of money. I did one and made everything that you made from those 10 orders. And it's strategically working smarter and not harder. It's really true. And it's such a thing that most people, once they get to that point and understand that you can really do well in a market where you think you probably shouldn't, because most people believe they have to be in a big major city to, generate the type of revenue that they dreamed of. And it's not true, because one of the things that I found coming back to South Carolina, is that in every market, there are people who have the income necessary to get you to where you want to be. I particularly went more of the studio route and not the retail route. And I actually came to that conclusion probably within the last 2 years, that I wanted to be more of the custom specialized studio as opposed to doing everyday retail, because I know there's always that divide, if you would, because when you're doing retail and everyday sales, you have to maintain that business, and trying to produce the level of work that I do, it's not always possible unless you have the type of staff who can do that.
Correct.
And so, doing retail, because I worked in retail, I know how hard it is to do retail. I wanted to be able to manage my time more. And so by doing such limited events, but doing quality events, allowed me to not only make the revenue that I need to sustain myself. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not broke either, so, and I don't feel completely drained. I have a better control of how many cakes I can do, and one of the things that I strategically try to do every month is try to do a week where I don't do anything, at all, because that's my rest period. I want to give myself time to kind of mentally recharge. This year is probably the anomaly where I don't, but I did pace myself in terms of how many I do in a weekend. So on average, give or take, at a busy weekend, maybe 3 orders in a weekend, but throughout the entire year, maybe about 40 total events a year. My goal is to get about to 50, which I'm almost there for this year. But once I hire my assistant, I will definitely do more. But for right now, yeah.
It's so I've had to laugh because I hope one of my friends is watching this. I just had a conversation earlier. There is I'm not throwing, I don't say names. I don't like throw people under the bus. Right. But there's an international baker. I mean, this woman is a beast. When I say a beast, like book. And her prices, I was like, friend, you're overworked and underpaid. Because, she quoted one of my friends for a cake. And I said, how much was the cake? I said, wait a minute. This woman is international. This woman is huge. Like, she is booked. Because first she was like, nah, I can't do it because I'm busy. But you know how we do in the industry. It's like, just call in a favor and see what they can do. So, a phone call was made and she was like, oh, I can do it for this amount. And I'm like, friend, no. She is undervaluing herself. She could do less cakes and charge a little bit more and she will be solid. Like, her product is great. She has good product. But I'm like, you can step your product up because you have more time to invest in that particular product. Like, her stuff looks good. Now I'm gonna be clear. Your stuff and her stuff, they don't look the same. You're both in two different buckets. I do consider you both to be luxury, but I want to put yours a little bit higher. But she stays booked because of her prices. I'm like, oh, I can get this. But she's a Instagram phenomenon. Like, everyone books her. And I'm like, but ma'am, you need to go up on your prices just a little bit. And like, I don't know how to tell her that.
Well, just to interject on that, a lot of bakers, find it a challenge to raise prices because the fear is if I raise my prices, people will leave. Clients. I'm going to lose clients. I said, well, those aren't clients. There's a difference. I always say there's a distinct difference between a customer and a client. Correct. A customer will buy just for the need. A client comes back for repeat purchases. Correct. I can honestly say I have several really, really great clients that, that I can rely on. I know throughout the year, they're going to come back for key events. And kind of going back a little bit too, when I wrote my business plan, it took me 2 years to write my business plan. Mm-hmm. And, some people feel as if it's not necessary to write a business plan. And I'm like, right, you really do. I mean,
that's your vision.
Exactly. However if you deviate from it or whatnot, you can always go back as a reference point. And that's why I'm an advocate for creating a business plan, just so you can see and reflect on exactly what you're doing. Are you living up to what you said you're going to do? Because I look at my business plan, I'm like, ooh, I should have had this done about 5 years ago. But the fact that I will oftentimes go back and read it is the fact that I know that I'm on the right path. Now, it didn't, like I said, it didn't happen as easy as I thought it was going to be because there was a lot of learning things. I mean, even to this day, there are a lot of failures that I've had. I've had some major financial failures. When I say financial failures, it cost me at least 2 years, just to try to get back to a point where I was able to get back to it. I know it seems, and a lot of people think, oh, you just have it all together. I said, I work every day trying to be better. And that's the difference as to what I do that can separate you from anybody is the fact that I resolved in myself that I said, I'm not going to work to the point of death, doing so many cakes within a week. But the results, are just, in terms of the income, is not there. I said, if you really took the time to really go through and look at what you do and what you need to charge based on your costing, because we see inflation happens with products and, the rate of pay doesn't increase as fast as inflation does. So you have to always go back and reevaluate what you charge in order to make sure that you're maintaining your household.
Correct.
And any other expenses that you have outside of that, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself in that rat race and you're going to end up leaving the industry quicker than you would had you took the time to really focus on clients that are of quality. I don't get upset when somebody decides to go to someone else, because I've had customers in the past say, well, I went to such and such because they were so much cheaper than you and they can give me exactly what they said you could do, but much less. And I'm like, okay, we'll go to that person, because at the end of the day, this is your money, not mine. I'm presenting with you exactly what you asked me, and this is the price that I gave you. So it's up to you to decide if it's worth it or not. And if me creating your cake, is worth it, then you'll go forward with that. But if you can't separate your mind, like, oh, the price is just way too much, that's fine too. Find somebody who will do it, because I always say this to clients and anybody's out there listening. If you're a potential client, the cheap cake lady won't always be the cheap cake lady. Let's remember that. So as they develop in their skills and their talents, their prices are going to go up, but you should never sacrifice the quality of what you're looking for based on the pricing that you want to pay. because there's a quote that I oftentimes give. See if I can remember it exactly as I like to give it. It's basically saying, you may get the price you want, but you will not get the quality you think you deserve. And so that's where it becomes the difference. And that's how I try to give clients that confidence to let them know that what I say I'm going to do that, but make it that much better. Because there are a lot of things that clients don't realize that we as bakers or anybody in the industry will do when you give them that freedom to really do what they do. Don't necessarily, I communicate, like I said, I communicate with my clients very well. And everybody gets, timely responses because I want them to always believe and know that I'm actually giving them the confidence that I can do what I said I'm going to do. But there are little things that I'll do that you may not even ask for that I do. And it's one of those things that, you'll never know. And it's something I should have charged you for. But I don't. But because of the experience and that you gave me that confidence in me, there are little things that I like to do just to make it that much more special. So word to the wise, if you're a potential client out there and you're looking at a baker, do not give them the third degree unless they're not giving you the performance that they said they're going to do. That's the only difference. If they're not meeting the expectation, then you have to hound them. But if they are, do those things and you will actually be able to get so much more from your baker if you do those things.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people do not understand what it takes to do what you do. A lot of people do not understand the mental part and the time.
Yes.
Like, we see the end product. Like,
yes.
I know I keep saying I wish everybody would experience your cakes, but before I could even enjoy or eat your cake, looking at your cake, my mind said,
it's gonna be nasty.
No.
It looks pretty, because that quote is, "It looks too pretty. It's not gonna be good."
I've seen those situations, but the person I work with here in Atlanta changed that because her cakes are amazing. They look amazing, which is why so many people book her. Her cakes, but they taste amazing. They smell amazing. They look amazing. So she changed the mindset for most people that I have worked with her of, oh, this cake is not going to be good. Because my first thing my clients have said is, Centron, her cake's expensive. And I'm like, they're like, it's not going to be good. Because I've heard people get these cakes and they be nasty. I'm like, trust me, write the check. You won't regret it. And it's like they show up on the day of their event and they're like, it smells so amazing. I'm like, wait till you taste it. So it's like, I'm glad you said it because people just don't understand. And I was able to look at your designs and experience one of your cakes and say, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't make this cake, because that's some work right there. That is some detail. That is work. Dwayne Queen said, oh Lord, I'm using the wrong thing. Dwayne said, awesome interview, loving this conversation. I have Dwayne coming up next week. He is a multimedia mogul. I love Dwayne. He go, maybe at some point in the future, when he becomes this universal international multimedia mogul, you all will work together and create this fabulous show, because people need to hear about all aspects of your business. It's the mental that people don't hear. It's the physical people don't hear. It's the cost that goes into doing this. All people see at the end of the day is, oh, he's charging this. But it's like, do you know how much it costs to purchase these products? And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about the intellectual side as well as the creativity. You're not flipping through a book.
Right.
I'm designing this for you. I'm creating this based on what I can go all night, because some of the stuff you have said is stuff I have said to other clients when they sit down with me. Like, I'm not going to sit here and battle you. This is how much it's going to cost to get this. Is what you want. This is what you want. This is the other vendors that I'm going to work with. And this is what it's going to cost. Sign here, press hard. And if you can't, I can recommend you to someone who can. And keep it moving. So what is the experience you hope each of your clients have when they work with you? Like, ultimately, how do you want them to walk away after their event?
Well, just from the standpoint of getting with them, trying to secure them as a client, I want them to always feel that they're confident in my ability to produce what I said I'm going to do. And when they actually see it, I want them to be like, oh my God, that's so much better than the sketch. And I'm like, I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, I'm not a Picasso, but I will give you at least a visual as to what the cake was going to look like. And I say every cake starts out as a sketch, and trust me, it's going to look that much more amazing when you see it in person. So I always want clients to be able to take away the experience knowing that the product was exactly what you tasted at your tasting, and that the expectations that you put that trust in me were met, and that you can always come back to me for baby shower cakes, other cakes and things of that nature. Because going back to one of the points I talked about with my business plan, one of the things that I knew when I started writing out demographics, I divided my clientele into three groups. I had the everyday celebrators, the wedding market, and there was I can't remember the other category right offhand, because I knew and how people would actually purchase. Those who purchase wedding cakes tend to come back for a shower cake, or they'll come back for special events. And that's one of the big things that I put into my business plan was I'm going to be that baker for those special life moments. I'm not going to be necessarily your everyday baker that you want to just run in and get a cupcake. That's not me. But I will be that baker that's going to give you exactly what you envision and give you that lifetime memory. One of the beautiful things that I do for my clients is the complimentary anniversary tier for their wedding, so they don't have to worry about freezing the top tier, because I want them to enjoy the cake just as they did on their wedding day. So at the end of the day, I really want my clients to, feel confident and trust the fact that I'm able to produce exactly what I said I was able to produce for them, and that they can always come back for other things. So how I start is how I want them to always remember the whole process. So
I love it. I love it. So describe the future for Chef Pringle and Gardenia's Customs Cakes and Catering.
well, the big thing is, like I said, I'm in my studio now, but I will also have retail. I will have some retail days. I won't be in everyday retail. I know a lot of people are getting excited, it's like, oh, he's going to be open every day. Trust me, the information will be forthcoming. I'm still getting some things finalized and, put in place just to make sure, because I'm one of those persons, I want to make sure that I put it in correctly before I actually present it to others for consumption. But there will be retail days forthcoming, and also the online store that will allow for shipping.
Awesome.
So there will be things that customers can actually order that would be shipped. I'm still working out the logistics on that. And also, like I said, with the candle part of my business, which will also be for sale. If you like the smell of cake all the time, these candles would be perfect for your house. There are three distinct flavors that I'm starting. Scents, excuse me. I'm thinking about cake, so I don't say flavor, but scents that are mirrored of three of the more popular cakes that I've actually produced. Other than that, there's some teaching my teaching platform is going to launch. I know I've had a lot of people ask, when are you going to start teaching? When are you going to start teaching? There's a lot that goes into this, and the way I want to teach is not necessarily technique driven, but more foundational principles. So I'm going to go from that standpoint of giving you all the basic things that you need in order to do any cake. So once I give you those things, you can actually take that information to go forward with whatever else you want to do in cake. Because my mission is to really give people the right tools from the beginning, so you don't, because if you can't afford culinary school, this will be a perfect way for you to actually learn to develop your skills. There's certain things that I will have to require that are done, in an order, because there's specific principles, as I call them, in my teaching platform that have to be achieved. Yes. And they'll move you through from the beginner all the way to the professional.
Oh,
So
nice.
those are some things on the horizon. And the big thing is really trying to find my ideal assistant.
I'm just listening to you this evening and describing the future for yourself and for your business. I'm like, people want your product, be it your uh, cakes or be it the custom training. People want that.
Right.
Like people want the instruction. Not everyone, as you said, can go to culinary school, but to be able to get little nuggets that can help them perfect what they currently do,
Yes.
to give them the science, to give them the heart, the
Yes.
creativity, that is a very big thing, which is going to open many doors, or doors are already open for you, but it's going to open multiple opportunities
Right.
for you to choose. So I always like to say you won't have room enough to receive because so many opportunities are going to be coming in your direction. What are, just as a closing little round out, what are a few words of advice for those who are seeking to build a successful brand such as yours? What are a few words of advice that you may want to give to someone?
For me, I would say start with a plan, develop a plan, use that plan as your guide. You may not stay 100% to the plan, but at least you have a blueprint of where you want to go. Secondly, invest in yourself, invest in your business. One of the things that I do encourage bakers in this, particularly in this profession, is not to tie all their revenue to things they're not using. Be strategic and intentional about the things that you purchase in order for you to grow your business, as opposed to, looking at it as, "Ooh, I need to have this." And if you're not going to use it, you don't need to have it. So, really taking that time to invest in, additional training. Always stay learning, stay, teaching yourself. There's nothing wrong with telling, a client that that's not your forte, because I'll tell you right now, I don't do, specifically a lot of carved cakes like animals and things like that. That's not my forte. But I know people who do, but I'm always learning in the background, trying to see how I can do it so I can make a duck look like a duck and not this crazy looking entity, so, is to really, take that time, to invest in yourself and give yourself some grace, more so than anything else, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and have a good circle of people
Mm-hmm.
that you can actually confide in. Not everybody's meant to be shared information. Some people are just meant to, just see the results of your actions. There's only a true core group of people that you can really rely on as a sounding board, and you have to be very cognizant of who those people are, because some people, have some good intentions, some people not so good intentions. So you would really want to make sure that you know the difference. And lastly, have a good foundation in prayer life. You're gonna need prayer. You gonna need
Lots of it.
and lots of it, because you can't get anywhere in this life without having some sense of faith. You have to believe in yourself. You have to be, and just believe in that, even though it's not happening right now, that it's coming. One of the things that I always, when I comment on people's work and things, when I compliment them on what they're doing, I always like to say, even greater is coming, because that's how I believe, because I live in expectations, and I live, knowing that God has a perfect plan for each one of us, and that we're going to get there. It just takes some time. And if you work diligently at what you do, the results will happen.
That's right. I am so happy that you were here. Like when I initially was like, okay, I need to have him on my show. When can I have him on my show? Initially, I
Right.
was like, okay, I need to put him and Lamar on my show together, because I was like, I
Right.
would love you both together. So then I was like, okay, then I had to have them separate. It's like I was all over the place. I was like, I have to have him on my show, and I am so glad and honored to have had you on my show. I look forward to all the future things that are coming your way that you're going to be producing or helping others with. But go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you, give your socials, any information you want to provide so that people can get in contact.
Okay, yes. If you first, I'm always going to send you to my website first because I invested in that website.
Okay.
www.gardeniascustomcakes.com. That's GARDENIAS custom cakes as an S on the end.com. And if you're going to follow me on Instagram or Facebook, it's Gardenias CC. Both handles, both pages. Search those, you'll find me. No problem.
Well, I will definitely have all of your information on my website tomorrow so that people can get to ordering, because we know for whatever reason everyone's going to be getting married
Right.
or having a special event that they want to invest in having a nice cake.
Tell them plan now because the year's about booked.
Listen, I understand. You go, I have 2 weddings this year, and they're all destinations, and my head is already spinning because I'm like, oh, this would have been great for Desmond, but one is in Cancun, the other is in Hawaii.
Hey, I'm going to Barbados in July for.
Oh, nice! Listen, you're gonna be everywhere. You're gonna be like, sorry, I can't do it. But you know what? That's where that assistant is coming in from. Right. So you can do more travel. They can do more domestic.
Well, if you're out there, potential assistant, hit my inbox.
There you go. Well, I would like to thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to send you backstage for a moment. Hang on, and I will be with you shortly, my friend. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Salad and Fries. It was such an awesome time having Chef Pringle on. He gave us all a wealth of information. I hope you're able to pick up some nuggets that will help you be more successful at your business, be it in baking or any type of creative. You were able to listen and hear the things that he has done to make sure that his business is successful. Next week, we're going to have none other than the multimedia mogul himself. Dwayne Queen is going to be gracing the Salad and Fries stage. That's going to be next week, Monday. That's March 14th at 7 p.m. Please make sure that you are liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can get to our YouTube channel by going first to our website at www.salad-in-fries.com. It's at the bottom of the screen. Please make sure you visit our website. Click on the YouTube link. Once you get to our YouTube channel, select subscribe and just go ahead and watch all the videos. We have a fresh episode of Salad and Fries every Monday at 7 p.m. If you're not able to catch us on Monday at 7, you can catch us every day at any time on every channel. We want to thank you so much for choosing Salad and Fries. We look forward to seeing you next week. Have a super, super evening, and we'll see you next week, Monday, March 14th.